We literally had our equipment. We had our food for a week. We had food for the mules for a week, water. We had everything we needed. And we'd lost power at our place in Mount Ola for about 18 hours. And when it finally came back on, we saw the news as far as the inaccessible areas, how many people were still trapped back in these different areas. And for us, it was a no-brainer. I can't even tell you how many times people have come up, they come across us, and they would just, ladies especially, would hug the mules and cry.
Welcome to High Strangeness, where we ask questions and explore all that is strange and unexpected in our reality.
Welcome to High Strangeness. I'm Tony, and this is the place where we talk about all things strange and unexpected in our reality. Today's episode is more about what you might consider to be unexpected. If you're like me, you may not know much about mules, to be honest. How are they used in the important scenarios around the world? Things that happen where they get brought in and utilized. I don't know anything about it, so that's what we're going to learn about today. To help us with that information, I'm excited because we have Mike Toberer, who is from the Mountain Mule Packer Ranch in North Carolina. So, how you doing, Mike? How's it going, my friend?
Doing good.
Excited to hear about this today and to have you on. How are things out there in North Carolina today?
Today, very rainy. It's been raining the last 3 days. We're hoping to get a break here soon.
Right, yeah. And how far are you from Charlotte?
Charlotte, we're about 40 minutes from Charlotte. We're
Okay.
just north of Charlotte, where we're based out of.
Sounds good. Now, Mike, is the Mountain Mule Packer business yours or organization? Is that your organization?
Yeah, Mountain Mule Packer Ranch. We started in 2012, and I own that company. And we work with special forces, and we train military to pack different things on mules. And then we also have a nonprofit called Mission Mules.
Oh, okay.
Let's
Let's get into all that for sure. Before we do that, a couple things, and then we'll start off with some basic questions and then get into all the things that Mountain Mule Packers is involved in. So originally you were, from what I could see, back in Nevada. When did you come out? Was it 2012? And do you still have a presence, your company, in Nevada?
Yeah, actually, we come out of California.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, and we moved out in 2012, and we moved all the way out here. We have no ties really other than family back there.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So, Mike, how did you get into this line of work? Like, what's your background?
You know, where we lived there in California, we sat at the base of the Sierra Nevada mountains, and a lot of people were packers. A lot of people did cowboy work, they did packer work. I liked working in the mountains, and I used to go in with my dad on small pack trips when I was younger, and it just kind of stuck with me and got in my blood, I guess.
That's cool. There's nothing better than something you've done as a young person. You have a passion for it, and you can carry it into the rest of your life. That's the way to do it. Right. So, Mike, it's funny because I found out about you or your company when I was looking through information about Hurricane Helene. And I saw a story and some pics that included mules helping in some way. Now, I want to get into that a little bit later, but I was surprised. I thought, mules? Whoa, what's going on there, right? So it caused me to dig a little bit, and then I ran into Mountain Mule Packers. And I thought to myself, I need to learn more about this. I think people would want to know. So we'll get into that in just a few minutes. But first, I want to start off real basic. People don't think I'm crazy here with this weird question. It's a basic question, but it's interesting what the answer is. I want to ask you, what is a mule?
A mule is a hybrid, a hybrid animal. It's half horse and half donkey. And you can do them either way, but that's the only way you can get a mule. They don't reproduce.
Yeah, that's the one thing I thought was interesting. Yeah. They're sterile, so that's the way to do it. Yeah. A couple things I thought of when I looked through here was their speed. They're pretty fast, right? I mean, they're closer to a horse than you'd think. They live up to 40, 50 years old, something like that.
I don't know if they live 40 to 50. We have a mule in our string that we brought from out west that's 29. I'm sure there's some that have lived in the 40s and 50s, but usually 20s to mid 20s, mid 20s to late 20s is usually the lifespan on them.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And a couple other things real fast that I noticed as I was looking through that I thought was really interesting, which is the hooves appear to be harder than a horse's, and their skin is more resistant to sun, rain, things like that.
Right.
So
Right.
they really are made to do hard work.
Yeah, I think they get that from the donkey side, that real
Yeah.
hard foot, tough foot, the thicker skinned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty interesting. Like that right there, I learned a lot just right there, right there. Because it's funny. You hear the word mule. I never thought a bit about what they were. They just kind of were interchangeable to a donkey to me. But when I saw this,
A
I
lot
thought,
of people do that.
oh, yeah. Well, we're going to get into a bunch of other stuff, but I am curious right up front. Like, how did the mules and handlers assist during or after Hurricane Helene? Like, what was their involvement there?
Well, where their involvement was, we moved. I'll tell you kind of how it started. We had a training set up with some Marines down in South Carolina, and it got canceled out because of the flooding down there the day the storm was coming in. So we literally had our equipment. We had our food for a week. We had food for the mules for a week, water. We had everything we needed to do that training, and then it got canceled. And we'd lost power at our place in Mount Ola for about 18 hours. And when it finally came back on, we saw the news as far as the inaccessible areas, how many people were still trapped back in these different areas. And for us, it was a no-brainer. We were set up. That's what we do is we move heavy equipment, weapons mostly, through tough environments in the mountains. That's our business. That's what we train the military to do. So we got together a little fuel money and we took off, and then it kind of took off from there. People, once my wife put it on Facebook, we had some Marines come up from West Virginia that run a chainsaw in front of us so we can move faster. Because a lot of times, if like the tree, say a tree went down over the road or the driveway, you can usually go up and around or down and around. Well, that was gone, so you had to go through it. Otherwise, you like I said, you couldn't make it. So that's where these chainsaws come in real handy, and we kind of developed a system on the fly, and then we started applying it to everywhere we went.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So really, it wasn't even the government that had thought proactively about utilizing you. You guys were like, hey, we can help here.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's where it came from. That is really cool. Thank you for that. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, honestly, I think if we would have been waiting for the government to bring in the mules, we'd still be waiting for the government to bring in mules.
Yeah, that's kind of how they work, isn't it?
Well, they did this time.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, they need to get better about some of that stuff.
But we are now, like I'll tell you, after we ended up going up to West Virginia when they flooded up there, and we actually got called in by the state troopers there. So now a lot of what we do, the agencies are calling us. Before we just showed up and went to work with what we knew. And the people that were on the ground collecting intel, we kind of got together, and that's how we found people.
That's awesome. So they're now highly aware that you're an asset that they can utilize to help.
I don't know if they're highly aware, but some of the ones where it mattered, where they could have used it, like your rescue squads and setups like that, they paid attention, and then now they're having us come up and train some of their equine units to be ready for that if it were to ever happen again.
Yeah, that's neat. Well, okay, a lot of things I want to get into. So, your company does a number of different types of trainings. I saw on there military, civilian, youth, and other things, corporate, team building. Right. We'll get into those things, but I think that's really neat and interesting. I want to start off once again with just a couple of basic things here. So more on the category of training and background. So can you explain a little bit about what mule packing is and how it's used in military or extreme terrain operations?
Okay. In the military, how it's used, see, packing, in these third world countries, pretty much everything's moved up in the mountains. The majority of us moved on the back of animals, whether it be a donkey, a mule, a horse, a cow, whatever, oxen. What we did is we came out in 2012 because the work we were in before, I worked for different pack stations over in the west side of the Sierra Nevadas, and they did a lot of fishing trips, family trips, hunting trips were a big thing. But then when we decided we wanted to start working with the military because the Marines have a high altitude training center just above where we worked at. And we seen some of what they do, and we got to talking to them thinking, man, we could do a better job than that. So we tried to get people to come out to Cali, but it just wasn't going to work. So we moved our operation, everything, to over by Fort Bragg, a little town called Rayford, North Carolina. And that's where we started. And the biggest thing that was when Afghanistan was still going. And they were using mules there to move weapons through the backcountry to supply caches or whatever they needed to hit targets. So we got in with some people with the Kennedy Special Warfare Center that helped us with our first jobs, and then pretty much that's what we do is we show these guys. It's evolved now since Afghanistan has wound down to more cyber type and satellite type of work. Like we pack in, they're called comms teams, and they have their way of communicating a bunch of different ways, but they pack in a lot of batteries, a lot of just their equipment. A lot of times we don't actually see their equipment when they actually do what they're doing. But and then the satellites, the same thing. The antenna, solar panels that we pack in because the whole deal, everything revolves around electricity. So you can't be running generators in denied areas. So what you'll do is we'll set up windmills that do electricity or hydro generators that we put in the streams to make electricity. We have the solar panels that we fold out that we pack in, and then they even bring in hand crank generators if it comes right down to it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's extensive. It's amazing. You know, it's funny to me, once again, going back to the point where so many of us in society, you know, we know the highway to work and back, and we don't see even what's on the side of the roads. All that you're describing, it's funny to me, almost 60 years old, and my thought is, I have never thought a minute about how that all works.
Don't look a day over 60, brother.
I know, right? It's crazy how little we recognize all the things behind the scenes. That's amazing to me. Well, maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I'm curious, you know, about what kind of training does go into this. Now, I don't know if it's proprietary or it's just, you know, how that works, but is there anything you can share about, like, what does the mule go through for the training? What does the handler go through for the training?
The mules, the whole thing pretty much boils down to desensitization.
Desensitizing?
Yes. Yeah. And that covers them for loud explosions, low bass sounds, just all the different things, smoke, sulfur from bullets, from ammo, that sort of thing. All that they got to get desensitized. And that just comes with just doing the jobs. Like we had some mules that we had to replace that got killed. And so all the new mules, we got them there a little younger, but they have to kind of work in, and pretty soon we'll start bringing one of them to a training with us, and then they'll start getting used to that. And then we'll bring another one in, but it's kind of a slow process the first couple of years. Then after that, it moves pretty quick.
Interesting.
And then as far as the handlers are concerned, if you're a mule packer, you pretty much can do this job. Okay. If you're not experienced in that and handling mules, you're not going to be able to do it safely because you get without the hurricane. Just say in the mountains, you get into tight spots. Mules, horses all have minds of their own. They have you have what we call wrecks up there. Sometimes things will pile up. So now you got to be able to handle that as a packer. Okay, when you go do a hurricane like this, not only do you have to deal with that, but you got to deal with the asphalt collapsing under you, crossing the rivers. A lot of that debris that's in those rivers is concrete and I-beams and rebar and all that got pushed from upstream. So you have to be able to know how to deal with that, and just the mud was like the biggest thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Crazy. So you've kind of talked about this a little bit, but I was curious. One of the questions I had was, how does the military packing differ from traditional civilian packing? But it sounds like the civilian stuff is more on like recreation,
yes,
fishing, stuff like that. Yeah.
yeah, that's primarily what the that's what it is. On that side, civilian side, it is recreation and moving slower, enjoying the ride or the walk in. The military now when you do recreational packing, you do practice a leave no trace concept, which you're always doing that, and that's about the only two things that the civilian side and the military side have in common. Is that we're leaving no trace just to preserve it. They're leaving no trace so they don't get killed. And
Right. Tracking.
so
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
But other than that, the pace is different. We move more at night than in the daytime. We don't go out to any open areas. We run the tree lines, which is
Hmm.
quite a bit harder, especially in North Carolina with the bush as thick as it is. You have to cut your way through a lot. But we basically are trying not to be seen. We're trying not to be detected after we left. Um, that's the difference. It's a fact. When we make a move, we make a move. We try to plan the time. We'll scope it out with the drone first to see exactly where we got to go, and we make the point A to point B as fast as we can, with as low visibility as possible,
Hmm.
and cleaning our tracks after us, and then we punch down and then wait till the next day.
Okay. Interesting. One of the things I thought of while you were asking or talking about this was the animals. Are they fairly calm and quiet? Like, it sounds like the training gets them calm,
Yeah.
right? But are they stealthy in the sense that they're quiet and move quietly?
Well, they move the same way whether you're doing civilian work or military work. The
Okay.
difference is when you're doing military, for instance, you want to make sure and use like the pannier bags, which is what hangs on the side that carries all the equipment
Hmm.
or goods. Um, you want to go instead of like we have aluminum panniers, we have plastic panniers, and then we have canvas panniers. Two of those make quite a bit of noise when they're moving through brush. The canvas makes a little less noise, so we'll use that. But they move about the same. They don't know they're sneaking, but the way you
Yeah.
handle them, if you take those mules, say you got 12 guys with 12 mules, and if you take and one guy gets too far out in front of the other ones, all of a sudden the mules, because of how they are, they're a herd animal. They want to get back together, so they all start braying back and forth.
Hmm.
That'll give up your position. So handling wise, you keep everything real tight. Nobody goes off by themselves. And then other than that, though, there's really not much else you can do to keep them quiet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well, that
then
makes sense about the herding there because, yeah. So half the technique is keeping them kind
keep
of
them
close.
close. Yeah, keep them in their range so everybody's comfortable. Because once they start getting nervous that they're getting left, then they start to respond to that.
Gotcha. Is there a standard weight capacity that these animals are able to haul?
Yeah, we figure 20%. Most of what we have is 150 to 200 pounds of dead weight gear.
Okay.
Now we have bigger mules, bigger animals. We've done more, but it's according to what you're packing for one, how much the weight is on it, but also the elevation,
Hmm.
the incline or the decline, all that kind of how thick it is. That kind of determines how much weight you put on.
I see. So really, in a way, your organization or whoever's coordinating and planning this is really doing some uh, assessment. Really.
Recon,
Yeah.
yeah. We do
Yeah.
what we call site surveys, and
Okay.
like our training areas will go 17 miles, 20
Hmm.
miles. It's a 5 and 6 day course. But yeah, you go up and you have to kind of scout it out because you have trees coming down all the time. If it's getting into the closer to the end of summer, first of fall, you start running into not having enough water issues. So you got to go know where to go dig your water if you have to do
Hmm. Okay.
that sort of thing.
Interesting. Now, if somebody's wanting to do this for a living, like they're like, this sounds amazing. I want to be this. I want to be this. what are the places out there to do this? So there's training and then kind of like event coordinating, like meaning, you take teams or civilians out for stuff. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is I want this to be helpful to somebody who's thinking, I love this. I want to learn how I can do this. What would you suggest there?
If you want to do this type of thing, you have to go learn it from somebody,
Gotcha.
or at least be around it. We do civilian courses and military courses. And if you go to our website, mountainmulepackers.com, that'll tell you when the next, I think the one coming up here this month is booked, but then we're going to open, and as they keep booking, we'll keep opening new ones. But I would suggest that's the first thing, is find somebody to help you with the basic intro, how to care for your animal, the equipment, how to saddle, not necessarily tying loads on the first time out, but basically going out and staying with your animal overnight, how you take them when you only have a limited amount of feed, how you got to feed your animal grazing wise up there. But that's what we teach in our class, our intro class. But yeah, if you need to start there, and then you need to get into the packing after that, actual different loads. And then if you're most everybody's going to be recreational packers. So we go over a lot, like say you're going in the backcountry for 3 nights. This is what you're going to need to take for feed for your mules. This is what you need to take for medicine for your mules. Pretty much kind of give you a breakdown of that. And that's the second class. And then from that one there, you can pack a mule and lead it in if you wanted to.
Okay, cool. Yeah, now this is just because I'm ignorant about this, are there a lot of organizations out there that do these excursions for civilians?
Not on the East Coast. On the West Coast there is. That's kind of where it started. There's a lot of packers, what I found working the storm, especially up in Tennessee, there's a lot of guys that have been packing their whole life up there. They don't quite do it the way we do it, but they still are, and they caught on to our ways, and I've been hiring them ever since. But out here, the main reason we moved our operation out here was because there was nobody out here that did this.
Right.
And there's still nobody out here that does this.
Good for you. That's awesome. And now good for the East Coast, who has that so close to them.
I agree.
The next question, and we kind of went into this too, but I was curious about the planning for the unpredictable environments. Like, what does that look like? Is it some of your team quickly come together and just assess something, and then that takes a day or something, and then you plan to go forward? Like, what does that look like if somebody somewhere in the country finds out that they need this help pretty quickly? Like, what does that process look like?
For us now, in the beginning, it was just like you said. We had the first day, okay, this is what we're going to need once we get up there. We have enough to sustain ourselves and our mules, but if we're moving supply, that took a little bit. Now, with our nonprofit mission mules, we can deploy out within 24 hours generally. Wow. So if we tracking a storm, say in the Ozark Mountains, and we're seeing it's going to hit and it's looking like it's going to be we'll actually start now. We're able to, because we have our trucks and our trailers, we have a different setup than when we started. We can start heading that way within 24 to 36 hours is our goal. And then just as you get going, then it pretty much what takes over there. You know what you have, you know what you're capable of, you know what your mules are capable of, you know what your equipment's capable of. So you start headed towards the storm, and then you'll get to a point to where you're not going to be able to go any further with the trucks and trailers. And that's where we decide to punch down, and then we start doing assessments on the ground before we send the mules out. Or before, we didn't do the assessments first. We relied on other organizations that were on the ground that were doing that, but we learned a lot from them. So that's one of the most important things, is to assess the situation. And then you know which way to deploy your mules. So that's kind of how it goes. But as far as what to do when you get there, we're kind of, as packers, we're kind of known for working off the cuff, I guess you could say, just as things come up, handling them. And that's
Yeah.
just, it's part of the business. You're working with, a lot of times we'll have 6, 8 mules strung together, and one guy's got to take care of them in the mountains for a week. So you're
Mm.
going to have things that come up, and you just learn to deal with them. In the same way, when you go out on this, when we went out on the storm, we dealt with things literally as we walked up to it. There was no way to
Wow.
prepare that for what you were going to see or encounter to get through. So
Yeah.
we just rolled in. We were all nervous. Once we got going, the adrenaline kind of took over, and just then it just, we understood the situation better, and then it wasn't such a
Yeah.
shock when we would get there.
A lot of reaction to whatever's in front of you.
Pretty much a lot of
So
reaction, yeah.
this speaks to your point about having a good background in knowledge and learning, because you need to have your toolbox up here
Yeah,
by the time you get there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. You know, let's spend a minute here on your nonprofit. You
Sure.
brought it up, and explain that and how that helps people and everything. So
What we did as we got going, we had to start the nonprofit. It's just we couldn't run the two together. So that's what we did. And it's taken off. It's got kind of a life of its own. Uh, but we still are doing relief work. And then, like I said, like after the North Carolina floods, then West Virginia and Kentucky hit, and we were able to deploy that way. Um, so what we did is we formed a nonprofit, and we with the exposure that we got through our company, different organizations, ministries. For instance, we work with a lot with the United Cajun Navy. Samaritan's Purse has worked with us. There's another ministry in Nebraska they're in the food business. They're called Orphan Grain Train, and they move food all over the world. And they've been started since the 80s. And an older guy, but he started supplying us with food. And so what we did is started setting up our own relief stations, because we were getting so many things donated, like clothing, like wintertime clothing and blankets, all the propane, all that our followers and other people too, when my wife would put it out on, like, say, Facebook, would respond, and we'd put that all together, and then we set up relief stations, like in Black Mountain, for instance. A couple months back we did that. Plus, we give 1,000 pairs of work shoes that were donated from a shoe company.
wow.
And so we do that. And then right now, we're doing just a lot of, like, I don't know, it's just, we call it like our healing events. But we
Yeah.
go and we take our mules for a meet. Like, we were just with the 21st Century Librarian Packers.
Mhm.
And they did an event. We brought the mules, and they did it at one of the churches that kept us for the night. So we went back there, and then it was a whole different scene now. There's a little bit of happiness in the air, like things are getting better, kind of feeling, where it wasn't like that
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
And then we'll continue to do that, and parades. And then as the next storm rolls in, which they will, we are
Yes.
now with the mission mules, we are set up to respond to that. We are building our volunteer list. So if anybody wants to go to missionmules.org,
Mm.
look on there. You can donate. You can sign up as a volunteer. We need volunteers. We have them pretty much all over the country now, but we would like more numbers at each place.
Yeah.
So, but that's what
These
we're still doing now, and that's what Mission Mules is going to continue to do.
That's amazing. The staying here for a second on the volunteer, because there could be people out here that are excited to do something like
Yeah.
this.
And you don't
What would
necessarily
they?
have to work with the mules. We have a whole distribution set up. Like, we are getting ready to start a program. When we were in West Virginia, back in those haulers there, we realized, one thing I realized is, these are some poor people back here.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that to our ministry in Nebraska. And he kind of looked into it, got a little info from me. And they said, once we get cleared to where we can break away a little bit, they want to start a food program for these 3 particular haulers back there.
Hmm.
And basically what their idea is they don't have to spend that money on food. They can spend it on repairing their place, because nobody had insurance back in those haulers where we were. They were just mountain people
Yeah.
that deal with it as life comes on.
Yeah.
And
That makes
so
sense.
I think that'd be pretty good. So we'll be doing, that'll be kicking up here, and we'll need volunteers to help us with that part of it. Somebody that handles, and
That's
not
great.
just, we will take, if they're good workers and they fit in with our program, we got a spot for you, but you got to be able to fit in, because everybody has a certain responsibility if you sign on with us, and you need to carry it through. So we've been real lucky and gotten just some excellent volunteers. They
Yeah.
are in it for the right reasons. They just want to help people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That's pretty cool. I can see people really getting excited to participate in that way. Thank you for answering that. Yeah, I was wondering how involved with the animal they would need to be, but
Yeah.
it seems like the whole process involves a lot of functions. Yeah.
Yeah, because the mules now we have like Kawasaki mules. We call them our iron mules, and some of like when we were in West Virginia, for instance, some of the places the roads are washed out, but the side by sides could still make it loaded down with water and propane and that.
Hmm.
So anywhere we could do that, because they're so much faster, we do, and we try to utilize those to make the trips on the mules a shorter distance. So if we can take supplies to where you absolutely have to have a mule to go, then the side by sides will take it there, rather than us pack it that extra 2 miles to get to where
Yeah.
you can't drive. You know.
Interesting. So essentially, if I'm hearing you right, the team or this whole process includes something like the side by sides as well as mules, and then you assist how
Yeah.
and when to utilize.
Yeah, and we are actually getting us a drone coming up here in the next couple of weeks.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah,
Cool.
because we do drone training with the military. And after watching this, a drone would have helped us a bunch just to get up out of the tree line and look. Okay, that mountain has slipped, so let's don't
Yeah.
waste 40 minutes going around there to have to turn around and come back. So that we're going to add that into what we're doing also.
Wow. That's really cool. Combination of technology and
$500
the,
mules.
yeah.
That's a joke. They're not $500.
No, I know that. Well, okay, this is another question from somebody who doesn't know much. So the animals, so you have your ranch, right? And I'm assuming there's mules there,
Mhm.
and now there's these deployable. No, yeah, you can deploy them, mules that are associated with this foundation, and so if something comes up, they're there to do that. But are there a lot of mules in the United States? Just like people own mules, or really not so much?
Well, I mean, not as many people who own cars, but there's a lot of mules in that subculture, in that world. There's
Okay,
associations, there's events, there's all sorts of things, and they go all 50 states.
gotcha.
There are a lot of mules. I don't know how much, but I mean, we're kind of a small section of the
Yeah, yeah,
population, mule people like that, and packers even less than that. Because what I found out west, everybody packed mules for the most part, and then you
yeah.
come out here, nobody packs mules. They drive them, they pull wagons, that sort of thing.
Mm,
So that gives you, the reason why there's not a lot of packers out here, because the mountains are too small to have really a
right,
full on pack operation.
right.
Like out west, you could do a hybrid version, which but you're not going in 4 6 hours. You go 4 6 hours in North Carolina, you're going to end up on the other road. You know what I
Right,
mean? You see
right.
what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, because but typically this is second part of that question too, which is unless you're somebody who has a bunch of these animals and you've prepared them in such a way, it isn't like something happens over here and local people are taking care of this. They're reaching out to somebody like you who needs like prepared and trained animals to go do this. Is
Yeah.
that fair to say?
Yeah. Like I said, nobody really reached out to us, like as far as agencies go.
Hmm.
It was more the people who reached out to us were my wife put on our website our phone numbers,
Yeah.
which was I mean, I wouldn't say it was a mistake, but it was overwhelming because we literally got thousands of messages, text, and
Wow.
can you check on my mom here? I was just talking to my wife, and then I lost service, and she can't get out, or that
Oh
we had a
boy.
lot of. So that's how we started. That's how we got to where we were going. But once we got, like I said, by West Virginia, the agencies called us, and that just made it easier for us because, like my wife, she handled the call center pretty much, her and a good friend of ours, and my daughters taking these messages, they consolidated them, tried to group them to zip codes and locations and deploy us out to the ones. But it was heartbreaking for anybody that worked that part of it because you can't help them all. We had 9 mules,
Right. Right.
5 people.
Right. Yeah.
So, and you can only do so much. So that was the hardest thing for us is
Hmm.
not getting to everybody.
That makes sense. Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask you, kind of going into the care and welfare kind of category here. I'm curious, do the handlers, how do they ensure their personal health, the health and safety of the animals? And is there even a consideration for the morale of the animals? Are they animals where we need to be concerned with their emotion? Do they get depressed? Do they, things like
Yeah.
that?
They're as far as I'm sure they do to some point in a mule kind of way, but really when these mules, if they're not feeling good, like say you go out there, we're getting ready to deploy out, and we get out there, and you got one that just doesn't look. It eyes may be a little runny, or its nose, it doesn't look right. You
Yeah.
won't take that mule, but if the mules are healthy, they'll go to work and go to work. Some like it more than others,
Yeah.
but um, they'll do it. Now, if they're not feeling good, it's a different story. You'll have some problems with them. And then, like as far as the morale, like for people, I can't even tell you how many times people have come up just walking where we were like staged for the day or
Hmm.
come back in, and they've been walking trying to get to a main road, and they come across us, and they would just ladies especially would hug the mules and cry, and it was
Yeah.
very emotional for a lot of people, and that's kind of what we think was the what happened, why it blew up like it did,
Sure.
um, just because it struck a nerve. It just showed hope, even though they knew the mules were in the area, they weren't at their place, but they felt comforted that the mules were in town and they heard
Right.
about them. Because once we got Starlink set up and packed in, set up, then people were able to, and generators were able to check the media and all that to see what's going on. And that's how they hear about the mules. And a lot of people now, the stories are, we knew they were in our area, or they knew we were coming to West Virginia. So,
That's cool. Yeah.
yeah,
They're almost like a hopeful. You see them and you get some hope. Like
yeah,
there's somebody coming
yeah.
to help. Yeah.
One lady called it a spiritual hoof print.
I love that.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, is there diving a little bit deeper into just like the people who are on the trail, right? Like the animals, the handlers. Is there a protocol for emergencies, injuries, if a mule gets hurt, injured
There is,
in the
when we
field?
were
Yeah.
working with the military,
Mm.
like I said, with our site survey comes along with all the emergency services that work in the backcountry, your rescue squads that are nearby. If there's heliports, if there's access roads that come up to where as close as you can get emergency vehicles, all that. With the storm, it wasn't like that because
Right.
you just went and you pretty much were just banking on you would have enough wherewithal to handle what came up.
Sure.
So,
That makes
and yeah,
sense.
there's sometimes it was pretty sketchy.
Yeah. You just got to do what you got to
Well,
do, I guess.
it's not even a conscious choice. You just go because you told these people you're going, and
Right.
you'll be there. You'll get to them, and that. So you just go.
Yeah. That makes sense. Well, I under like the category of equipment and techniques, couple questions here. So, are there any essential pieces of gear, equipment that you might get in the military setting versus some other packer setting?
Uh, no, the military is pretty basic. It's crew served weapons, bodies, and then Pelican cases that carry either satellites or computers or whatever it is, depends who we're training.
Mhm.
Where on the other side of it, it's more your sleeping bag, your tent, your food for your fishing poles, your hammock, all the stuff you want to enjoy the backcountry with. That's. I mean, it's packed the same way, but it's just
Mhm.
different items.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. And then I was wondering about, there seems in every area of life, there's innovations, right? Are there any, or have there been any recent innovations in gear or techniques that have changed the way the mules are used now versus, years and years ago?
You know, I'll tell you the biggest change I've seen in the equipment from the time I started doing this till now is that everything's dang near tripled in price.
Yeah,
But
right.
other than that, it's the same style sawbuck saddles, same style bags, same style bear boxes or aluminum boxes. That's all pretty much stayed the same.
Tried and
Different
true.
versions of it, but it's the same saddle, the same pads, same ropes.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, it's worked and it
yeah,
keeps
it's
working.
worked. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. What makes a great mule handler? And how do they get trained, or they just find themselves there? Any
You know,
thoughts on that?
we're not. We're called packers. We're mule
Okay.
packers. To be a great mule packer, I really couldn't tell you. To be honest, all I
Mhm.
know is that the more hours and the more years you spend in the backcountry, you learn a lot more. I don't know if that makes you better, but it does make you more knowledgeable.
Yeah.
Some people have just a sense around animals with mules, horses, and mules, and they're great packers. There's other guys that don't have quite that sense, but they're still great packers.
Mhm.
But in our own minds, I guess you could say we're great packers. But
Yeah.
everybody's a little different. It just comes down to the amount of years you've been doing it.
Yeah. And the impression I'm getting, correct me if I'm wrong, is that these animals are amazing at what they do, and they kind of get in line and do the work as long as we support that, right?
They put their head
Yeah.
down and they go to work. You handle them right. You put them in the right situations. Now you put them in something that they feel like they can die. You will not get them in that situation. They will
Sure.
fight you all the way. But it was different when we were up here working. It's like there was a sense that normally we would probably do something different, go around different, do something different. We just went, and it's like I wouldn't say that the mules like sense that, but something made
Hmm.
all those mules follow each other all the way through there. And once you got the first
Interesting.
one through, where sometimes you'll get halfway through and one mule don't think it's a good idea, he'll sit back and start breaking ropes.
Hmm.
These guys just worked because if they did fight or sit back, they're liable to slide right off. So, and I don't know how they process that, but something kept them uh,
Yeah.
uh, on track in a situation they normally wouldn't be in.
Yeah. So it seems like there's some kind of innate safety mechanism that they recognize things that are
Yeah,
just off. That's pretty cool.
yeah.
Um, so I think I know the answer to this question, but let me ask it anyway. Will mule packing continue to have a place in modern military and survival operations, despite technology that's available today, right? Because we've got terrain that can't be.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
But what I've seen happen, we've been doing this with the military for about 13 years now, since
Mhm.
2012. And what I'm seeing is the mules were just basically carry weapons, carry ammo. Now they're starting to incorporate the trainings to more of the Space Force type stuff, the communications teams, the logistic companies, that type of stuff. I think there's a future in it with the
Yeah.
military, especially just because they're so adaptable. And it's like you said, there's some terrain. It doesn't matter if you have helicopters or not. If you got a tree canopy, you don't know what you're setting down in the trees. Where you at? You can't see. Your
Yeah.
visual's gone. That's where your mules can move it in. And we do a lot of things where aircraft will drop door bundles, and then our teams will roll in at night. They'll get a GPS on it. They'll roll in at night. They'll break those bundles down, put them on the mules, and then finish going into the more wooded areas where the helicopter couldn't get to.
Yeah.
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 But yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
now as far as the recreational packing and the pack stations, I honestly feel we're dying off pretty fast.
really. Yeah.
Just, it's an old school deal, and a lot of people don't like to rough it that much when they do their wilderness adventures anymore.
Right. Well, they can get a side by side and pretend. Right.
Well, yeah, and you get a lot of places with the side by sides. That's for sure. We
Yeah.
worked right alongside of them, and I'm glad we did because we were catching a lot of flack that let the side by sides try it. Let them go in there. We were faster. But what we soon, like the first 15 minutes, found out is when we would go into the deadfall area, and the chainsaw guys would have to cut the chains, so would have to cut the trail for us to pass. Very easily, they could cut it a little wider to accommodate the side by sides,
Mhm.
But what the problem was when they cut it for us, it wasn't a problem for us, but when they cut it for us and that log hit the ground, as long as that log was 2.5 feet or smaller, the mules could step right over it. The side by sides can't climb that
Oh,
side. And
yeah.
if they do get over it, it just throws all the load and everything, what they're hauling all around. And so what you got to do there is you got to cut that up into manageable pieces where then you got to actually roll. So we figured it takes 5 times longer to clear that all the way for a side by side to get through than a mule. Because 2 cuts, it hits the ground, we keep rolling.
Wow. Yeah. That
And
makes
we don't
sense.
have to, like any of the branchy stuff that you can't ride through on a four-wheeler or a side-by-side. You can maneuver through that thinner stuff with the mules until you get to another big log, and then they'll cut it, you'll step over. So for that, that it works.
Yeah.
There was no comparison. But now once we got things opened up and people could get up there as side by sides, and we didn't go back. The side by sides would run the food, and they would do 10 times the work we would do in a day.
Yeah. That
But it
makes
had to
sense.
be
Yeah.
opened up, and the people had to do a wellness check on them before anything, and that's where we came in.
It's interesting to me. So I live in Utah, and we've got some pretty big mountains out here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing when you travel out into those mountains how sometimes you wonder, man, has there ever been a person back here? Right? Because it's like it's so big and
Yeah,
it's amazing. And you think, or at least I think, boy, I don't want to get lost out here.
that's right.
You know what I mean? Because will I ever be found, or will I be a fossil in 50 years that they find? Yeah.
That's right.
So yeah, I mean, there's going to be a place in my mind for
Now
the
for what we
excess.
do, like search and rescue SAR teams, what we're
Hmm.
finding is that I see a future in that because they all have equestrian units.
Yeah.
And if they could learn how, like in this situation in Virginia, in Butler County, or in Carter County, they told us there was an area there that we couldn't get through till like 6 days in, and that they figured that's where the mules would have worked good. We were already deployed somewhere else. Um, so what's happening though is like with these search and rescues, they're wanting to go take it one step further, and they're wanting to do like we do at the military. And as they're moving through the backcountry, deploy a drone up, look around, come back down, and then that tells you which way to go. So I see if you can cross market those and coordinate the different techniques to find people, I believe that's the future right there. Doing it
Yeah.
just mules, they're real limited. What they can do as far
Right.
as they move supplies through the storm. That's one thing. But now if we can find people with the use of some electronics, some satellites, some drones, because our drones run the thermal imaging.
Oh yeah.
See, so then that's huge because they can pick up from 100 and some feet away. So
Yeah. That's interesting all
we're
that
banking
is.
that that's the way it's going to go.
Right. Right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your company, your organization. You know, tell us a little bit more about it. Like, just what kind of so people know what to expect, and like if they see your logo somewhere, right, which is a cool logo.
Which are you
And
talking to, the nonprofit or my company?
let's talk about your company
Okay.
itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mountain Mule Packers. We started that in 2012, and we've had this same logo since we started. And really what it means is we're trying to do our part to just help some good guys that work in some really bad places. And that's our whole focus. You know, the teams we deal with are they put their life on the line daily. So
Yeah.
anything we can do to help them along, that's what we're going to do. So that's kind of if people see our logo, I'd like them to know that we are from Mountain Mule Packers, that we are pretty much we were built and we come into fruition just to work with the military to help them be better skilled in more than just one area. You know,
Hmm.
they're skilled in a lot of areas. I mean, they train constantly, different things, but what we do, we just felt that it could help. And now that after 13 years, we are just really proud of the fact that we are still helping and doing our
Yeah.
part, trying to stay in the fight with them.
Love that. Yeah. So I see that you guys have public mule
Yeah,
packing, youth group instruction,
yeah.
corporate team building. Can you
Team building,
talk a
yeah.
minute about some of those?
Yeah, the team building, those are good. We actually those are pretty good. They're basically we take a Marine Corps course and we take out the weapons and more of the tactical, and but the same concept is when they roll in, they get their mule, they get their gear, they get the instruction. Then we do most of our training. It's not in a classroom. We do our classroom while we're standing in the corral, and as different situations come up, we tell them how to handle it, and that's how we learn and we get on the move pretty quick. And the corporate team building, they seem to like that because you can put like two guys on each mule, that sort of thing. And then
Yeah.
there's problem solving. We'll send them out and you're going to have to take this load, cross load it with what's going to be there, and then return back. And you'll be timed. And so that's good. The kids groups, that's how I started. I started teaching 4-H kids where we come from in California, and that went great. The parents all got
Yeah.
involved in it because it's kind of one of those projects where if your kid's gonna be in it, you or mom have to be there the whole time. You can't just drop them off. And what
Hmm.
happened is more of the dads got into packing and buying mules because where we live, than the kids actually.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
and then, but I'll tell you what our biggest thing we're most excited about is that the last training we did, we realized that if we took out the military aspect of it for veterans, retired veterans of the military, to be up in the mountains with this mule, you and this mule and a small group of people doing the same thing, but not necessarily side by side. Like you may camp over to one side by the creek, you may camp somewhere else. Usually people will camp closer together, but we just found that looking at the soldiers that were there, the older guys, and they're still in, but it's like they would tell us, this is what we need when we're out. We need this type of therapy, he called it.
Yeah.
So we put our heads together and we have basically it's the Marine Corps course. But like I said, we take out the tactical, but we try different areas to where it's not the training areas that we use now are designed for specific things we're got to accomplish. But like if for our veterans, we could take them to places on the river, on the Elk River, or where we know the fishing's good, or we know there's a lot of swimming holes or that sort of thing. So we're really excited
That,
about that, and we're hoping to that takes off good for us. And we do that through our for profit. And then we also the veterans we do through Mission Mules nonprofit.
yeah, that sounds amazing. I
Yeah,
can see that completely taking
yeah.
off.
Because you got to
Yeah.
figure if you're a backpacker, you'll put on 50 pounds, 60 pounds, maybe. If you're a badass, you'll carry 60
Yeah.
pounds. Now, our Marines and our soldiers carry up to 120 pounds. Okay. That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
But so you figure, okay, you're used to carrying 50 pounds of stuff to go be gone for a week. Well, if you bring a mule with you and lead them along, you could bring in 150 to 200 pounds. So now you have a little better sleeping accommodations. You might even have a couple cold beers in there, in an ice chest or some meat, not to dehydrate.
Yeah.
It changes it, and I don't know. I just think people will like that.
I can see that for sure. Yeah, that's really neat. Um, do you see your company changing or expanding in upcoming years? You're kind of talking about some things that you think
Yeah.
may
I
kick
don't see
off,
it.
might expand.
Yeah, I don't see it expanding. I see it changing quite a bit
Yeah.
as far as different programs that we do, because the exposure we have now has put us out there to where there. I didn't realize how many people really were interested in filling these classes up. I figured if we could get 2-3 people, but we're filling them. So I
Wow.
feel like we would be doing a service if we kind of changed and maybe expanded into those directions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, this question I wrote down earlier, but I don't think it's. I'm going to change it a little bit. What I said was, how could someone, or how would somebody become a trainer in this case? But really, it's a packer. But what if they wanted to be associated with mountain mule packers? Are there jobs that open up sometimes? Do they just do it as a volunteer at first? Like somebody says, I want to be part of that group. What would you say to them?
If you want to be a volunteer, you go to Mission Mules, and you can. It doesn't guarantee you in with the mules, because we'll kind of screen as people, because not everybody is conducive to working with mules.
Right.
You got to be physically in pretty good shape. You got to be kind of quick thinking, and you can't be hard on the animals. As far as the for-profit, we try to hire people who are already experienced. But if you're wanting to get experience, the best way is to call us and take our classes. And then we're more inclined to, if you go through 3 of our classes to where you're at the advanced level, that doesn't make you an advanced packer. That's just the advanced level. What makes you an advanced packer is 40 years of packing, right?
Right.
So, but we're more inclined, if you've gone through all those courses and we need to bring somebody in for hire or for nonprofit, either way, you would be one of the top ones on our list if you completed the course. That's how we would do it. We don't have a lot of openings, but we are looking for some younger guys that have experience with horses, mountains, and we can teach them the mule packing to kind of help me keep this going, so I don't have to be in the field when I'm 70 years old.
Right. Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I'd like to be in the field at 70, but not busting my ass like that.
Right.
More
Maybe on
the
the side by
recreational side of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, I this has been great,
Okay.
Mike. I mean, I've learned so much. I've got the questions I wanted to come with answered. Is there anything you want to share about mountain mule packers or just this space in general to the audience out there?
The main thing that people should know about us, not just mountain mule packers, but Mission Mules, is we are Christian based, and
Nice.
we are God, family, and country. That's how we do it, and so that's my message to the people. Just let's be good Americans. Let's get our country back, and let's do good.
Love that.
Yeah.
No better advice. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, as we get ready to wrap up here, Mike, your website again, and how can people? Is there a social media
Yeah,
links
you can go
that
to we have Instagram also, but you go to mountainmulepackers.com. And that gives you, if you go scroll through like the pictures, you'll get a real good idea. Here lately, it's been pictures of the events that Mission Mules has been doing, but you scroll past, you'll start seeing our trainings that we've just done. Kind of give you an idea what we're all about there. And then the other, if you are looking to volunteer and you want to get involved, you want to go to missionmules.org and get signed up there. And then by then you'll start following us, and we will you'll notify you when we're doing the next trainings, and if you're interested, or if we're doing, sometimes it's not always about the mules. Like we're getting ready to empty a warehouse and move it to our new warehouse that we just built. So we'll have volunteers meet us for that and do that. And then, or if we're loading trucks to go to a relief station, there's always that kind of work to do.
Mm-hmm.
With our new place that we have now that we're building, the volunteers can actually come out. The warehousing will be there. The mules will be there. The whole facility will be there. So then they can come out. It's not just and see the mules. Maybe they are going to work in the warehouse, but they still want to see the mules. So then they'll be there. See.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Mike, for spending some time with us today. This was really super interesting. I learned a lot and had my mind open to some things that I wasn't even aware of. Love it. For the audience out there, thank you for joining us as well. And just saying to everybody, if you like this kind of variety on our strange and unexpected show here that we do, please consider subscribing to the show. Tell others about us, and maybe hit the like button here and there. Put in some comments. What did you think about this? Did you learn something you didn't know before about mules and this whole process? I did, for sure. So as we close down, I just want to say to everybody, thank you. And remember, there's a lot of strange and unexpected in our reality. So always keep your eyes, ears, and minds open. And until next time, stay safe.
Thank you for listening to High Strangeness. This was a glance at some of the strange that exists in our reality.